The seductive foxwoman said grooming was normal, but her heavy blush revealed how wet it made her. The wounded enchantress. The autumn forest wore twilight like a velvet cloak as Cale Branwyn adjusted his surveying equipment, marking another coordinate on his weathered map. 3 months of solitary wilderness mapping had taught him to appreciate silence. The whisper of wind through amber leaves, the distant call of evening birds, the subtle music of nature undisturbed by human chaos. Then he heard the whimper. Cale froze, listening. There it was again, soft, pained, distinctly feminine. His practical mind warned against investigating unknown sounds in these remote woods, but his conscience wouldn't allow him to ignore someone in distress. Following the sound through thickening undergrowth, he pushed past a curtain of willow branches and stopped dead. She lay beside the sacred hot spring he'd noted on his maps but never approached, her form both human and decidedly not. Luminous skin gleamed pearl white in the gathering dusk, contrasted by sleek russet fur that traced elegant patterns along her limbs. But what stole his breath were the 4 magnificent tails, each as long as she was tall, spreading around her like silken flames of amber and cream, tipped in pure white. Fox spirit, Cale breathed, though he'd thought such beings were merely legend. Her eyes snapped open, brilliant gold flacked with green, and fixed on him with wary intelligence. "Human," replied she, her voice melodic despite obvious pain. "How fortunate, or perhaps cursed, depending on your intentions." Cale raised his palms in peace, slowly approaching. "You're hurt. May I help?" She studied him with unnerving intensity, then gestured weakly to her ankle, badly swollen. "Hunters, iron traps. I escaped, but—" She winced, attempting to stand and failing. Without thinking, Cale knelt beside her, carefully examining the injury. The ankle wasn't broken, but severely sprained, already bruising beneath the soft fur. The fox spirit watched him with curious golden eyes as he worked, noting his gentle touch, his scholarly focus. "I have a cabin nearby, shelter, supplies to treat this properly. You'll heal faster there than out here exposed." The fox spirit tilted her head, tails rustling with contemplation. Something in his earnest gaze, his careful hands, decided her. "Very well, cartographer. I am Saphira, and you've just invited considerably more than simple gratitude into your isolated life." Her smile held secrets that made Cale's pulse quicken, though he couldn't yet understand why. The ritual's hidden truth. Cale's cabin embraced them with warmth as he settled Saphira onto cushions near the stone hearth, the fire casting dancing shadows across her luminous features. He worked methodically, wrapping her ankle with practiced care, applying salves he'd learned from forest healers during his travels. Throughout, Saphira watched him with those penetrating golden eyes, something playful and dangerous lurking in their depths. "You tend me with such devotion," she murmured as he finished bandaging. "Among my kind, such care creates obligations, debts of honor that must be repaid." Cale settled back, pushing his dark hair from his eyes. "No debt necessary. Anyone would help someone injured." "How charmingly naive." Saphira shifted, her 4 tails arranging themselves with mesmerizing grace. "But I insist. There is a ritual, a purification ceremony my people perform after trauma. It restores spiritual balance, cleanses negative energy." Her voice dropped to honeyed silk. "It requires a partner, someone trusted. Would you assist me?" Something in her tone made Cale's mouth go dry, but her expression remained innocently earnest. What would this ritual involve? "Simple grooming," Saphira explained, producing a carved wooden brush from seemingly nowhere. "My tails absorbed the hunter's violence, their iron-tainted malice. They must be cleansed through careful washing and brushing, each stroke drawing out corruption." She gestured to a basin of heated water infused with fragrant oils.
perfectly normal, purely ceremonial. Kale hesitated, sensing undercurrents he couldn't name, but her injured state and apparent sincerity convinced him. If it helps you heal, of course. Saphira's smile widened almost imperceptibly. Wonderful. Come, sit closer. She positioned him behind her, guiding his hands first to dip in the warm, herb-scented water. Start at the tips, work towards the base, she instructed, her voice steady. Slow, deliberate strokes. Don't rush. The ritual requires thoroughness. Kale began carefully, running his dampened hands through the first tail's silken length. The fur was impossibly soft, warm and alive beneath his fingers, and he felt Saphira relax into his touch. He worked methodically, just grooming, just helping, nothing more than the innocent ritual she'd described. But as his hands moved higher, approaching where her tails emerged from her lower spine, Saphira's breathing changed. Subtle at first, a slight catch, a softer exhale. Her posture shifted, spine arching almost imperceptibly. When Kale's fingers brushed the sensitive base where tail met body, Saphira gasped, a sound decidedly unlike ceremonial composure. "Continue," Saphira whispered, but her voice had thickened, grown breathy. Kale's heart hammered as he moved to the second, then third tail, repeating the careful washing and stroking. With each pass, Saphira's reactions intensified. A flush bloomed across her neck and shoulders, visible even against her luminous skin. Her breathing became audibly unsteady, punctuated by soft whimpers she'd tried to suppress. When Kale reached the fourth tail, working through its luxurious length with thorough attention, her entire body trembled. "The brush now," Saphira managed, her voice barely controlled. "The final purification." Kale took the carved implement, drawing it through her tails in long, sensual strokes. The ritual pretense had become paper-thin. Saphira's hands gripped the cushions, claws extending slightly into the fabric. Her thighs pressed together, shifting restlessly. The sweet, musky scent that filled the cabin wasn't from the oils. It was pure arousal, her body's betrayal of the innocent ceremony. When Kale's hand accidentally brushed her hip while steadying a tail, Saphira made a sound between a gasp and a moan, her head falling back, golden eyes half-lidded with unmistakable need. "Saphira," Kale whispered, his own desire now undeniable. "This ritual isn't purely ceremonial, is it?" Her answering look, heavy with want and tinged with embarrassed acknowledgement, told him everything.
The confession of desire. The carved brush slipped from Kale's fingers, clattering forgotten to the floor as tension crystallized between them. Saphira's breath came in shallow pants, her composure shattered, the heavy blush spreading down her chest. The evidence of her arousal perfumed the air, impossible to ignore, impossible to pretend away. "You knew," she whispered finally, not quite meeting his eyes. "When did you know this was more than ceremony?" Kale's voice came rough, honest. "The moment your scent changed, the moment you trembled at my touch." He paused, then added quietly, "Perhaps from the beginning, if I'm truthful with myself." Saphira laughed, the sound breathless and self-deprecating. "And yet you continued. Why?" "Because I wanted to." The admission hung between them, raw and real. "Because watching you try to maintain that innocent facade while clearly drowning in pleasure was the most intoxicating thing I've ever witnessed." She turned then, those golden eyes meeting his directly, vulnerability replacing her usual playful confidence. "The ritual is traditional," she confessed, "but only between bonded mates. It is sacred grooming, yes, but also profoundly erotic, designed to build intimacy, to awaken desire, to prepare lovers for joining." Her tails curled protectively around herself. "I was exiled from my clan for teaching these sacred practices too freely, for embracing the pleasure over the propriety. They called me shameless, corrupted by sensuality." "Are you?" Kale asked, moving closer. "Corrupted?" "No." Saphira's voice strengthened. "I'm honest. My people fear the intensity of these rituals, the vulnerability they demand. I refused to be ashamed of what brings joy, connection, ecstasy. She looked at him searchingly. I deceived you about the ritual's nature because I needed to feel your hands on me, to experience desire again without judgment. But I didn't anticipate. Didn't anticipate what? How thoroughly you'd undo me. The confession came out barely audible. How every stroke of your careful hands would make me ache. How completely I'd want you. Her blush deepened impossibly. I'm wet, Kale, soaked and desperate from your innocent grooming, and I can't pretend otherwise anymore. Kale closed the remaining distance between them, one hand gently cupping her flushed cheek. Then don't pretend. I've been hard since your first whimper, wanting nothing more than to discover exactly how sensitive those tales truly are, how many ways I can make you tremble. Saphira's eyes widened, then darkened with hunger. Are you not disgusted? Uncomfortable with what I am? I'm captivated, enchanted, completely willing to learn every secret your people consider too dangerous to teach. Her mouth met his in answer, the kiss explosive after so much restrained tension. Saphira tasted like wild honey and wood smoke, her lips soft and demanding as she pressed against him. Her tails wrapped around them both, creating a cocoon of silk and warmth, pulling him closer until no space remained between their bodies. Kale's hands roamed freely now, exploring the fascinating blend of smooth skin and soft fur, tracing the elegant lines of her form. Saphira arched into his touch, gasping when his fingers found the sensitive base of her tails again, deliberately this time, with clear intent. She responded by tugging at his clothes with trembling urgency, her claws careful despite her desperation. Show me, Kale murmured against her throat, feeling her pulse race beneath his lips. Show me all the pleasures they feared. Teach me your sacred rituals properly. Saphira pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, her own burning with promise and relief. Once we begin, there's no casual touching between us again. These rituals bond souls, Kale. Every grooming becomes foreplay. Every touch carries intent. Are you certain? He answered by claiming her mouth again, deeper this time, his hands sliding deliberately through her tails in the pattern she'd taught him, but now with full understanding of exactly what each stroke did to her. Saphira moaned into the kiss, her body melting against him, and whispered one word against his lips. Yes. The union of worlds. Firelight painted their skin in amber and gold as clothing fell away, each garment a barrier removed between human and spirit. Saphira's luminous form seemed to glow brighter with arousal, the russet patterns along her limbs shimmering like living art. Kale traced those patterns reverently, learning her body with scholar's focus and lover's devotion, memorizing every place that made her gasp, every curve that fit perfectly against his palms. Beautiful, he breathed, and Saphira's answering smile held both pleasure and relief, to be desired without fear, wanted without shame. She turned then, those golden eyes meeting his directly, vulnerability replacing her usual playful confidence. The ritual is traditional, she whispered, trailing clawed fingers down his chest with exquisite care, but only between bonded mates. It is sacred grooming, yes, but also profoundly erotic, designed to build intimacy, to awaken desire, to prepare lovers for joining. Her tails curled protectively around herself. First, the grooming you performed, building desire until restraint becomes torture. Her hips rolled deliberately, making them both shudder. Second, the worship, learning each other's bodies as sacred temples. She demonstrated, lowering herself to taste his skin, her tongue tracing patterns that made him arch and groan. Kale's hands tangled in her hair, careful of her delicate fox ears, and when she took him in her mouth with devastating skill, he understood why her clan feared her. This intensity, this shameless pleasure was intoxicating beyond reason. But Kale refused to be merely recipient.
He reversed their positions with gentle strength, spreading her beneath him, and began his own exploration. He kissed down her throat, lavished attention on her breasts until she writhed, then lower still. When his mouth found her center, already slick and swollen with need, Saphira cried out, her tails wrapping around him possessively. "Kale," she moaned, as her tongue worked her with methodical thoroughness, learning what made her thighs tremble, what rhythm made her claws dig into the cushions. He held her open, vulnerable, worshipping her arousal until she shattered at his mouth, her release coating his lips as she screamed his name. Before she'd finished trembling, Saphira pulled him up, kissing him deeply, tasting herself on his tongue. "Now," she demanded breathlessly, "the third stage, the joining, where two become one." Kale positioned himself at her entrance, pausing despite desperate need. "Are you certain? Your ankle." "Will heal," she interrupted, wrapping her legs around his waist, her tails forming a cocoon around them both, creating a cocoon of silk and warmth, pulling him closer until no space remained between their bodies. Kale's hands roamed freely now, learning her body with scholar's focus and lover's devotion, memorizing every place that made her gasp, every curve that fit perfectly against his palms. "Beautiful," he breathed, and Saphira's answering smile held both pleasure and relief. To be desired without fear, wanted without shame. Kale began to move. Their rhythm started slow, deep, each thrust deliberate as they learned each other's bodies in this most intimate way. Saphira matched him perfectly, rolling her hips to take him deeper, her inner walls gripping him with exquisite pressure. Her tails caressed his back, his shoulders, creating sensation everywhere at once. "Harder," she urged, and Kale obliged, increasing his pace, driving into her with building intensity. The cabin filled with their sounds, skin against skin, breathless moans, whispered endearments in both human tongue and fox spirit language. Saphira's claws raked down his back carefully, leaving trails of tingling sensation without breaking skin. Kale felt her tightening around him, her body climbing toward another peak, and he shifted angle slightly, hitting the spot that made her vision white out. Saphira's scream of ecstasy echoed through the forest as her second release crashed through her, her entire body convulsing with pleasure, her tails constricting around them both. The sensation of her climax, combined with the silken pressure of her tails, shattered Kale's control. He thrust deep one final time and let go, pouring himself into her welcoming body as her own release claimed him, pleasure radiating from his core to his extremities. They collapsed together, hearts racing, bodies slick with exertion, still intimately joined. Saphira's tails loosened their grip, but remained draped over them like a blanket, and neither had any desire to separate. "The fourth stage," Saphira whispered, eventually, her voice satisfied and drowsy, "is this, the bonding, where souls recognize each other." Kale kissed her forehead tenderly, then her lips. "And the fifth stage?" Her smile was pure contentment. "Repetition. Frequently."
The eternal bond. Dawn filtered through the cabin windows, painting everything in soft rose and gold. Kyle woke to find Saphira nestled against him, her tails wrapped protectively around them both, her sleeping face peaceful in a way he suspected was rare for her. He studied her features, the delicate fox ears, the elegant bone structure, the slight smile that lingered even in sleep, and felt something profound settle in his chest. Love. Impossible, immediate, undeniable love. Saphira stirred, golden eyes opening to meet his, and her smile widened. "You're still here," she murmured, as if she'd half expected him to flee in daylight's clarity. "Where else would I be?" Kyle traced her cheekbone with gentle fingers. "Though I should ask, can you even return home now after sharing these rituals with me?" The joy dimmed slightly in Saphira's expression. I was already exiled. Last night merely confirms I have no place among my clan." Before Kyle could respond with sympathy, she pressed fingers to his lips. "But I don't want that place. I never wanted their fear-bound propriety, their shame around pleasure and intimacy. I wanted exactly what we shared: honest desire, sacred passion without apology." "Then stay," Kyle said simply. "Stay here, with me." Saphira's breath caught. "You'd want that? A fox spirit who can't separate grooming from seduction? Who'll turn every tender touch into an invitation?" "I'm counting on it." Kyle's grin turned wicked. "In fact, I believe your tails could use another thorough brushing, for spiritual balance, of course." Her laugh was pure delight. "You're incorrigible. I've corrupted you completely." "You've freed me," he corrected, rolling her beneath him, already hardening again against her thigh. "My maps and measurements suddenly seem terribly dull compared to exploring every inch of you, learning all your people's secret rituals, spending my life worshipping you properly." Saphira's eyes glistened with unexpected tears. "You truly mean it?" "Every word." Kyle kissed her deeply, then whispered against her lips, "Teach me everything they feared. Bond me to you so completely that I'll never want another. Make me yours." "Oh, my scholarly love," Saphira breathed, her tails already beginning to caress him strategically. "Now let me show you the morning rituals. They're particularly intense." She proceeded to demonstrate, and Kyle learned that fox spirit stamina was remarkable, that creativity in lovemaking was truly an art form, and that his isolated cabin had become paradise. In the weeks that followed, they fell into a rhythm. Kyle's cartography work balanced with Saphira's grooming sessions that invariably led to passionate encounters in various locations around their forest home. She taught him fox spirit magic. He taught her human poetry. They created their own traditions, their own rituals, blending two worlds into something uniquely theirs. When winter came, they rarely left their warm cabin, spending long nights wrapped in her tails and each other's arms, proving that what began with deceptive innocence had become the truest love either had known, unashamed, uninhibited, and utterly eternal. Lessons from the scholar's forbidden touch. True intimacy requires vulnerability, the courage to reveal your authentic desires without shame, and the wisdom to honor another's honesty with acceptance rather than judgment. Love transcends the boundaries others construct. The most profound connections often form when we dare to step beyond propriety into honest passion.